The scream tore through the winter silence like a blade through fabric. Emma Hartwell's fingers froze on the rifle barrel she'd been cleaning, her mother's warnings about venturing beyond the cabin forgotten in an instant. She'd heard wolves before. Their distant howling was as familiar as wind through pine. But this was different. This was the sound of a man fighting for his life. She grabbed the rifle and bolted toward the ridge, her worn boots slipping on ice-slicked ground. Her mother had died 3 months ago, leaving Emma alone in their mountain homestead with nothing but debts and the knowledge that spring would bring creditors to claim even the roof over her head. At 22, she'd become invisible, the widow's daughter with no dowry, no prospects, no future. Before we continue with Emma's story, I'd love to ask you to take a moment to subscribe to the channel and give this video a like. It truly means everything to us and motivates us to bring you more quality stories like this one. Also, I'm curious, where are you listening from today? The snarling grew louder as she crested the hill. Below, in a narrow ravine, a man stood with his back against a stone outcrop, a broken tree branch in his hands. 4 wolves circled him, their gray bodies low and patient, waiting for exhaustion to claim their prey. Blood darkened his left sleeve, and his breathing came in visible clouds in the freezing air. Emma didn't think. She raised the rifle, aimed high to avoid hitting the man, and fired. The crack echoed through the canyon. The wolves scattered, their pack instinct broken by the unfamiliar sound. She fired again, and they vanished into the timber like smoke. The man sagged against the rock, the branch falling from his grip. Emma scrambled down the slope, stones sliding beneath her feet. Up close, she could see he was younger than she'd first thought, perhaps 30, with dark hair and eyes the color of strong coffee. His shirt was torn, revealing glimpses of a muscled chest marked with old scars. A farmer's build, she thought, broad-shouldered and powerful from years of hard labor. "Can you walk?" Her voice came out sharper than she intended, fear making her practical. He nodded, but when he tried to push away from the rock, his legs buckled. Emma caught him, her small frame bracing against his weight. He was heavy with muscle and bone, and the warmth of him seeped through her threadbare coat. "My cabin's a mile north," she said. "You'll freeze if we stay here." "I can make it." His voice was rough, each word an effort. They didn't make it a mile. Halfway there, he collapsed, and Emma had to half-drag him the remaining distance. By the time she got him through her cabin door, her arms were trembling, and sweat froze on her forehead despite the cold. She laid him on her mother's bed, the only bed, and began cutting away his shirt. The wolf had caught him across the ribs, 4 parallel gashes that bled steadily, but weren't deep enough to be fatal. She'd seen worse injuries on farm animals. "This is going to hurt," she warned, heating water over the fire. "Can't hurt worse than the wolves." A ghost of humor touched his voice. She cleaned the wounds with steady hands, her mother's training guiding her movements. He didn't cry out, but she felt his muscles turn to stone beneath her fingers, his breath catching when she pressed too hard. "What's your name?" she asked, partly to distract him, partly because she needed to know who she'd saved. "Nathan Cross. I have a ranch. Had a ranch. 15 miles west." His jaw clenched as she began stitching. "Bank took it last month. I was heading east, looking for work. Stupid to cut through the high country in winter. Stupid to travel alone," Emma corrected, tying off the last stitch. "But brave to fight 4 wolves with a stick. Wasn't much choice in the matter." He caught her wrist as she started to pull away, his grip gentle but firm. His eyes found hers, and something in their depths made her breath hitch. "You saved my life. What's your name?" "Emma Hartwell, the widow's daughter." Recognition flickered across his face. "I heard about your mother. I'm sorry." Emma pulled free, turning to wash the blood from her hands. Everyone knew about the widow's daughter, the girl whose father had died in a mining accident, whose mother had worked herself to death trying to keep their land, who now sat on the edge of ruin with nowhere to go and no one to help her. "You can stay until you're healed," she said, her voice flat. "But I can't feed you long. I barely have enough for myself. I can work. You can barely stand. I'll heal fast." His determination was palpable, a force of will that seemed to fill the small cabin. "And when I do, I'll earn my keep. I know farming, ranching, hunting. I can fix what's broken, build what's needed. Just give me a chance." Emma wanted to say no, wanted to protect herself from the complication of this stranger, from the inevitable moment when he'd leave and she'd be alone again. But when she looked at him, really looked at him, she saw something she recognized. The same desperate determination that stared back at her from her own reflection each morning. "Fine," she said. "But if those wounds fester, you're on your own. I can't afford a doctor." Fair enough. He settled back against the pillow, exhaustion finally claiming him. "Thank you, Emma Hartwell. I won't forget this." She watched him sleep as darkness filled the cabin, adding wood to the fire with careful precision. Outside, wolves howled in the distance, and the first snow of the season began to fall. Emma had saved a stranger's life today. She had no idea she'd just saved her own. Nathan woke to the smell of coffee and frying bacon. For a moment, he thought he was back at his ranch, that the past 6 months had been a nightmare. Then pain flared across his ribs, and memory crashed back. He sat up carefully, finding Emma at the small stove, her back to him. In daylight, he could see the cabin properly. Tiny, barely more than one room, with walls that let in drafts, and a roof that probably leaked. But it was clean, organized with the precision of someone who'd learned to make the most of very little. Emma herself was not what he'd expected. Small and thin, yes, but there was steel in the line of her spine, strength in the capable movements of her hands. Her hair was the color of autumn wheat, pulled back in a practical braid. When she turned and caught him staring, he saw intelligence in her gray eyes, and something else. A wariness that spoke of hard lessons learned. "You should lie down," she said, bringing him a plate with portions too generous for someone claiming poverty. "Your fever broke in the night, but you're not healed. Neither are you." The words came out before he could stop them. Her hand froze halfway to setting down the plate. "What's that supposed to mean?" "I can see it. The way you move like you're expecting a blow, the way you flinch when I speak too sudden. Someone hurt you." Emma's face went carefully blank. "Eat your breakfast, Mr. Cross. Your fever's making you imagine things." But Nathan had seen too much violence in his life to mistake the signs. He watched his own mother bear the same wounds, hidden beneath long sleeves and false smiles. He didn't press, though. Trust, like healing, couldn't be rushed. The days fell into an unexpected rhythm. Nathan's wounds healed with impressive speed, and true to his word, he worked. He fixed the loose boards on the porch, patched the roof before the next snow, chopped enough wood to last through winter. Emma cooked and cleaned and tried to maintain the distance between them, but it was impossible in such close quarters. On the 4th night, with wind howling outside and the cabin creaking under the weight of a blizzard, Nathan asked the question that had been building. "Why are you here alone?" Emma was mending one of his shirts. She'd insisted, saying she wouldn't send him back into the world looking like a beggar. Her needle paused. "My mother died, I told you that." "But before, a woman with your skills, your intelligence, you could have married, found work in town. Instead, you're here, barely surviving." The needle moved again, sharp and precise. "I was engaged once, to a man my mother thought would provide security. Matthew Holbrook owned the general store in Clearwater Creek." Her voice was flat, reciting facts. He seemed kind at first, patient. Then the wedding got closer, and he started showing me who he really was, how he expected his wife to behave, the punishments for disobedience. Nathan's hands clenched into fists. "What happened?" "I ran. 3 weeks before the wedding, I just ran. Came back here, to my mother. Matthew tried to follow, to drag me back. Said I'd shamed him, that I owed him. She finally looked up, and Nathan saw the steel beneath her fear. My mother stood on that porch with her husband's rifle and told him if he set 1 foot on our property, she'd bury him next to my father. He left. But the town, they took his side. We became outcasts. My mother worked herself to death trying to keep us fed, and now the bank's coming for the land because we couldn't pay taxes. When? Spring, April, maybe May. Nathan stood, ignoring the pull of healing wounds, and crossed to where she sat. He knelt before her, making himself lower, less threatening. "Emma, look at me." She did, reluctantly. "You're not property," he said, his voice fierce with conviction. "You're not something to be traded or owned or punished. You're a person, a strong, brave person who saved a stranger's life and asked nothing in return." Tears gathered in her eyes, but she didn't let them fall. "Strength doesn't pay debts, Mr. Cross." "Nathan, and no it doesn't. But maybe we can help each other." He took a breath, the idea that had been forming for days finally crystallizing. "I've been thinking. I know farming. You know this land. Together we could make this place work. Plant in spring, raise some livestock, pay off your debts, and build something real." "Together," she repeated, the words strange in her mouth. "Together, partners. I'm not asking you to marry me, or belong to me, or any of that." Though even as he said it, Nathan knew he was lying to himself. He'd felt something shift inside him the moment Emma had crashed into his life, rifle in hand and fire in her eyes. "I'm just asking you to let me help, to give me a reason to stay somewhere, build something that can't be taken away." Emma studied him for a long moment. "And when you heal completely, when spring comes and the work gets hard, what's to stop you from leaving?" "Nothing but my word, and I'm giving it to you now. I stay until you tell me to go. I work until this debt is paid and you're safe. That's my promise." She wanted to believe him. He could see it in the way her guard dropped, just for a second, revealing the young woman beneath the armor. But trust, he was learning, was harder won than any battle. "All right," she said finally. "Partners, but you sleep in the barn once the weather clears. And if you ever raise a hand to me, I'll die before I hurt you." Nathan interrupted, his voice raw with truth. "I've seen what violence does, Emma. I'll never be that man." Something in her expression softened. "Then we have an accord, Nathan Cross." That night, as the storm raged outside, they talked until the fire burned low. Nathan told her about his ranch, about watching the bank take everything his family had built. Emma spoke of her father, killed when she was 12, and how her mother had become both parents, teaching her to shoot and track and survive in a world that had no mercy for weak women. When Emma finally fell asleep in the chair, Nathan carried her to the bed. She weighed almost nothing, and covered her with every blanket they had. Then he settled on the floor by the fire, his ribs protesting, but his heart strangely light. For the first time since losing everything, he had something to fight for, something worth protecting. Winter deepened, and Nathan kept his promise. He slept in the barn once his wounds closed, rising before dawn to break ice on the water trough and check the 2 aging horses Emma had inherited. He hunted, bringing back deer and rabbit to supplement their dwindling stores. He taught Emma to track in snow, to read animal signs, and find game in the deep woods. In return, she taught him the secrets of the mountain, which plants would heal, which would kill, where water ran clean even in the coldest months. They worked side by side, their silence comfortable, their movements developing an unconscious synchronicity. But there were moments that tested Nathan's restraint. The day Emma slipped on ice and he caught her, their faces inches apart, her breath warm against his cold skin. The evening she washed his hair, he'd been injured again, a minor cut from splitting wood, her fingers gentle against his scalp, her touch sending electricity down his spine. And the night he found her crying in the barn, clutching a letter that had somehow made it through the winter mail, What is it? He approached slowly, giving her space to refuse his comfort. She thrust the letter at him. It was from Matthew Holbrook, and Nathan's blood turned cold as he read. The man claimed Emma had stolen from him, compensation for time and reputation lost, and was demanding either return of the supposed money or her hand in marriage to settle the debt. If she refused, he'd involve the territorial marshal. "It's a lie," Emma said, her voice shaking with fury more than fear. "I took nothing. But who will believe me? A disgraced woman against a respected merchant?" Nathan crumpled the letter in his fist. "He can't force you to marry him. Can't he? I have no money, no family, no proof of innocence. When spring comes and the bank takes this land, where will I go? What judge will side with me over him?" She looked up at Nathan with eyes full of desperate determination. "I won't go back to him. I'll die first." "You won't die, and you won't go back." Nathan knelt before her, taking her cold hands in his. "Emma, marry me." She jerked back as if burned. "What?" "Marry me, a real marriage. If you're my wife, he has no claim, and I can fight for you, protect you legally. Together, we'll have a stronger position with the bank, with the law." "No." Emma stood, wrapping her arms around herself. "I won't trap you like that. You've been nothing but kind, Nathan, but I won't chain you to my troubles." "You're not trapping me." He rose too, frustration making his voice rough. "Do you think I stayed here just out of gratitude? That I've been working myself to exhaustion for months because I owed you a debt?" He caught her shoulders, gentle but firm, making her look at him. "I stayed because of you, because somewhere between that first day and now, I stopped being able to imagine a life that doesn't have you in it." Emma's breath caught. "Nathan, I see you," he continued, his voice dropping to something tender and fierce all at once. "I see a woman worth fighting for, worth building a life with. I'm not asking you to be some obedient wife. I'm asking you to be my partner in every sense, to face whatever comes next together." Tears spilled down her cheeks. "What if I can't? What if I'm too broken to be what you need?" "Then we'll be broken together." He wiped her tears with his thumbs, his touch reverent. "Emma, I'm not asking for perfection. I'm asking for a chance. Give us a chance." For a long moment, she just looked at him, searching his face for any hint of deception or hidden cruelty. Nathan held still, letting her see all of him, his scars, his fears, his absolute conviction. "All right," she whispered finally. "Yes, I'll marry you." Nathan pulled her into his arms, holding her like she was something precious and fragile and infinitely strong all at once. She was trembling, and he realized he was too. "I promise you won't regret this." "I already do a little," she said, but there was the smallest hint of humor in her voice. "You snore." He laughed, the sound startling them both. When was the last time either of them had laughed? "I'll work on that." They were married 3 days later by a circuit preacher, passing through on his way to Clearwater Creek. The ceremony was simple. No flowers, no fancy dress, just Emma in her mother's best skirt and Nathan in the shirt she'd mended. But when he slipped a ring onto her finger, his mother's ring, the one thing he'd kept when the bank took everything, Emma felt something shift in her chest. "With this ring I thee wed," Nathan said, his eyes never leaving hers. "For better or worse, in plenty and in want, in joy and in sorrow, until death do us part." When the preacher told Nathan he could kiss his bride, Emma tensed. Nathan saw it immediately and instead brought her hand to his lips, kissing her knuckles with gentle reverence. "We go at your pace," he murmured, too quiet for the preacher to hear. "Always." That night, they shared the cabin as husband and wife. Nathan made a pallet on the floor, despite Emma's half-hearted protest that married couples should share a bed. "When you're ready," he said simply, "not before." Emma lay awake for hours, listening to Nathan's breathing, even out into sleep. She'd married a virtual stranger, tied her life to a man she'd known for barely 3 months. Every logical part of her screamed that she'd made a terrible mistake. But when she finally slept, she didn't dream of Matthew's fists or her mother's death. She dreamed of spring planting, of green shoots pushing through dark earth, of Nathan's hands in hers as they built something neither of them could create alone. Spring came late that year, but when it arrived, it brought both hope and danger. The snow melted, revealing the work that needed doing: fences to repair, fields to plow, a barn roof that had barely survived the winter. Nathan worked from dawn to dusk, and Emma beside him. They planted potatoes and corn, invested their combined resources in 3 young pigs and a milk cow. The banker came in April, a thin man with calculating eyes and papers that claimed ownership of everything Emma had left. He studied the marriage certificate with obvious displeasure. "This doesn't change the debt, Mrs. Cross." Nathan stepped forward, his size suddenly intimidating. "No, but it changes the timeline. Under territorial law, you can't foreclose on a working family farm that's actively being improved. We've planted crops, invested in livestock. Check your own regulations." The banker's jaw tightened. "I'll be back in 6 months. If you haven't paid at least half the debt by then, regulations won't save you." It was an impossible demand, half the debt in 6 months, but Nathan just nodded. "We'll be ready." When the banker left, Emma turned to her husband. "How are we going to earn that much money?" "We'll find a way." Nathan's confidence was unwavering. "Together, remember?" They did find a way. Through backbreaking work and sacrifice, Nathan hired himself out to neighboring ranches for extra cash. Emma sold preserves and herbs in town, ignoring the whispers and stares from people who still remembered her broken engagement. They hunted and trapped, selling furs to traveling merchants. But it was Emma's idea that truly saved them. She knew the mountain better than anyone, knew where gold-bearing streams ran hidden in high valleys. They spent 2 weeks panning in secret, bringing home enough gold dust to make a real dent in the debt. Through it all, their relationship deepened in ways that had nothing to do with legal bonds. Nathan taught Emma to read the sky for weather, to gentle horses with patience rather than force. Emma showed Nathan how to find peace in the evening silence, to see beauty in the mountain's harsh grandeur. And slowly, carefully, they learned to be more than partners. The first time Emma initiated touch, it was a simple thing: taking Nathan's hand as they walked back from checking traps. He squeezed gently, asking nothing more. The first time she kissed him, it was late summer, after a day of successful harvest. She stood on tiptoe and pressed her lips to his, soft and questioning. Nathan held perfectly still, letting her control the moment. When she pulled back, his eyes were dark with want, but patient. "Emma, I trust you," she said, and the words felt like a gift she was finally ready to give. That night, for the first time, she climbed into bed beside him rather than sending him to his pallet. Nathan held her close, his arms protective but not confining, his heartbeat steady beneath her ear. "Go slow," Emma whispered, old fears rising. "It hurts to be vulnerable like this." "I'll die before I hurt you," Nathan repeated his promise, his voice fierce. "We go at your pace, always." They made love slowly, carefully, with a tenderness that brought tears to Emma's eyes. Nathan watched her face constantly, stopping when she tensed, praising her when she relaxed into pleasure. It wasn't perfect. Emma flinched more than once, and Nathan had to battle his own impatience, but it was real. Honest. The start of something healing for them both. Afterward, Emma cried, and Nathan held her through it, understanding that these were tears of release, not pain. "I never thought I could feel safe like this," she confessed against his chest. "You are safe. You'll always be safe with me." He kissed her forehead, her cheeks, the tip of her nose. "I love you, Emma Cross. I think I have since the day you shot at those wolves." Emma laughed through her tears. "I love you too, even though you snore." I don't snore. You absolutely do. They fell asleep tangled together, and for the first time in her life, Emma felt truly home. But peace, they learned, was a fragile thing in the territories. Matthew Holbrook arrived on a September morning, bringing 3 men with him and a marshal's badge that gleamed in the weak sunlight. Emma was in the garden when she saw them coming, and her blood turned to ice. "Nathan!" Her shout brought him running from the barn, rifle in hand. He took in the situation instantly, stepping in front of Emma with his body. "That's far enough." Matthew reined in his horse, his handsome face twisted with righteous anger. "That's my fiancée you're harboring, Cross, and a thief besides." "That's my wife," Nathan corrected, his voice deadly calm. "And whatever lies you've been spreading, they end now." The marshal shifted uncomfortably. "I've got a warrant for Emma Hartwell's arrest." "Emma Cross," Nathan interrupted. "And on what charge?" "Theft of $500 and breach of contract." Matthew pulled out papers, looking satisfied. "She agreed to marry me, took money for wedding expenses, then ran." "That's fraud." "That's a lie." Emma pushed forward, but Nathan held her back with one arm. "My wife never took a cent from you, Holbrook. And any agreement you thought you had ended when you showed your true nature. Now get off my land before I shoot you for trespassing. You're harboring a criminal. I'm protecting my wife from a man who beat her." Nathan's roar silenced everyone. "I've seen the scars, Holbrook. The marks on her arms where you grabbed her, the bruise on her ribs from where you kicked her when she refused to be what you wanted. You want to talk about crimes? Let's discuss assault." The marshal's expression changed, uncertainty replacing his previous resolve. Matthew's face went red, then white. "She's lying," he said, but his voice had lost its conviction. "Women like her, they make up stories." "Women like her?" Nathan's laugh was without humor. "Women who are brave and strong and refuse to be property? Yeah, I guess they do threaten men like you." He lowered the rifle slightly, addressing the marshal directly. "You want to arrest someone? Arrest him for assault and harassment. I've got a signed testimony from Emma detailing every time he hurt her, every threat he made. And I've got witnesses from Clearwater Creek who saw him drag her across the street, who heard her screaming for help." This was a bluff. They had no such testimony written, but Matthew didn't know that. His face contorted with rage. "You'll regret this, Cross, both of you. The only thing I regret is not finding Emma sooner." Nathan's voice dropped to something cold and final. "You have 10 seconds to get off my property. After that, I stop being civilized." The marshal, reading the situation correctly, pulled his horse around. "This warrant is questionable at best, Holbrook. I suggest you drop this matter before it becomes a legal problem for you." Matthew stared at Emma with such hatred that she felt it like a physical blow. "This isn't over." "Yes," Nathan said quietly, raising the rifle again. "It is. You come back here, you try to contact my wife again, and I'll bury you next to her father. That's not a threat, that's a promise." For a long moment, Matthew looked like he might do something stupid. Then he yanked his horse around and spurred it into a gallop, his hired men following. The marshal tipped his hat apologetically to Emma and Nathan before riding after them. When they were gone, Emma's legs gave out. Nathan caught her, lowering them both to the ground, holding her as she shook with reaction. "He found me," she gasped. "He'll come back. He'll never stop." "Yes, he will." Nathan tilted her face up, making her meet his eyes. "He's a coward, Emma. Cowards only hurt people who can't fight back. Now you have me, and I will never let him near you again. What if he brings more men? What if he gets a real warrant? Then we fight. In court if we have to, but together." He pressed his forehead to hers. "I told you once, I see a woman worth saving, worth fighting for, and I meant it. Whatever comes, we face it together." Emma wrapped her arms around his neck, holding on like he was the only solid thing in a spinning world. "Together," she whispered. "Together," he confirmed. They sat there on the ground until Emma's shaking stopped, until the sun climbed high and the everyday sounds of the farm reminded them that life continued, that they had work to do and a future to build. That night, Nathan barred the door and windows, and they slept with the rifle within reach. But Matthew didn't return. The marshal came by 2 days later with a note explaining that Matthew had left the territory, the warrant dismissed due to irregularities in the complaint. It was over. Finally, truly over. 6 months later, on a bright October morning, Emma stood on the porch of their cabin, improved now, with new windows and a solid roof, and watched Nathan work in the pasture with their small herd. They'd paid off the debt with their combined earnings, even had a little saved for winter supplies. But more than that, they'd built something real, a partnership based on trust and work and love that had grown naturally from shared struggles. Emma no longer flinched when Nathan moved too quickly. Nathan had learned to read her silences, to know when she needed space and when she needed holding. He looked up, caught her watching, and grinned. Even at this distance, she felt the warmth of it, the promise of nights spent tangled together, of mornings greeting each other with coffee and plans for the day ahead. Nathan jogged over, vaulting the fence with easy grace. "What are you thinking about?" "That day with the wolves," Emma said. "How I almost didn't go, almost stayed in the cabin and let you die. But you didn't." He pulled her into his arms, and she went willingly, fitting against him like they'd been designed for this. "You saved me, Emma, in more ways than you know. You saved me too." She looked up at him, this man who'd kept every promise, who'd fought for her and with her, and never once tried to own her. "I love you, Nathan Cross. I love you too, Emma Cross." He kissed her, deep and slow, until they were both breathless. "Want to know what I was thinking about?" "What?" "That barn needs a new door. And I was thinking maybe we could add a room to the cabin, for when—" He trailed off, suddenly shy. Emma's heart swelled. They'd talked about children. About the future, but always carefully, aware of how much healing they both still needed. "For when we're ready?" "Yeah, when we're ready." He touched her face, his calloused fingers gentle. "No rush. We've got time." "We do," Emma agreed. "All the time in the world." They stood there together, watching the sun climb higher, their land stretching out before them. Paid for, fought for, earned. Not given or inherited, but built by their own hands, their own choices. The widow's daughter had rescued a farmer from a pack of wolves, never imagining he would marry her. But that was only the beginning of their story. The best part, they were learning, was everything that came after. The ordinary days, the quiet nights, the slow building of a life that belonged to no one but them. Together. The first snow of their second winter together came early, catching Nathan mending fence line on the far edge of their property. Emma watched from the kitchen window as white flakes began to swirl, worry tightening her chest. He'd been gone since dawn, and the temperature was dropping fast. She was pulling on her heavy coat when the door burst open. Nathan stumbled inside, but he wasn't alone. He carried a child, a girl perhaps 7 or 8 years old, unconscious and blue-lipped with cold. "Found her in the north pasture," Nathan gasped, laying the girl on the bed. "Looks like she's been out there for hours." Emma's training took over. She stripped the girl's wet clothes, wrapping her in every blanket they owned, while Nathan built up the fire until the cabin blazed with heat. They rubbed the child's hands and feet, working to restore circulation, and after what felt like an eternity, her eyelids fluttered. "Mama," she whimpered, and Emma's heart broke at the fear in that small voice. "Shh, you're safe now," Emma soothed, brushing dark hair back from the girl's forehead. "I'm Emma. That's Nathan. Can you tell us your name?" "Sarah." The girl's teeth chattered violently. "Sarah Chen. My mama. The wagon turned over. Papa was driving too fast. Mama told me to run, to find help." Nathan was already at the door, rifle in hand. "Where, Sarah? Where did this happen?" "The Old Creek Road, near the—" The big rocks that look like teeth. Fresh tears spilled down her cheeks. Please, my baby brother was crying. Mama wouldn't wake up. Emma met Nathan's eyes across the room, seeing her own fear reflected there. The old creek road was treacherous even in good weather. In snow, with an overturned wagon? I'll go, Nathan said. Not alone. That road. I know the risks. He grabbed extra rope and blankets, his movements efficient despite his obvious exhaustion. But I can't leave them out there, Emma. You know I can't. She did know. It was one of the reasons she loved him, this bone-deep inability to turn away from people in need. Emma kissed him hard and fast. Come back to me, please. Always. He touched her face, then was gone into the swirling white. Emma held Sarah close, singing old songs her mother had taught her, while hours crawled past with agonizing slowness. The girl drifted in and out of sleep, calling for her mother, and each cry made Emma pray harder. It was full dark when she heard horses. Emma flew to the door, flinging it open to see Nathan leading 2 horses, his own and one pulling a makeshift travois. On it lay a woman, Chinese, beautiful despite her pallor and the blood matting her black hair, and a baby wrapped in Nathan's coat. She's alive, Nathan called, but Emma could hear the strain in his voice. Barely. The baby too. But her husband, he didn't make it. They carried the woman inside, laying her on the bed next to her daughter. The baby, a boy, perhaps 6 months old, wailed lustily, which Emma took as a good sign. She examined the woman while Nathan stabled the horses, finding a serious head wound and what looked like broken ribs. Mama! Sarah crawled to her mother's side, taking her hand. Mama, please wake up! The woman's eyes opened, unfocused and pain-filled. She spoke rapidly in Chinese, then seemed to gather herself. Sarah, you're safe. Thank the gods. Her gaze found Emma. My daughter, my son, they're both fine, Emma assured her. You're at our home. You've been hurt, but we'll take care of you, all of you. My husband? The hope in her eyes was desperate. Emma shook her head gently. I'm so sorry. The woman's face crumpled, but she held her grief close, mindful of her watching daughter. James was a good man. He tried. The wheel broke. Everything happened so fast. She clutched Emma's hand with surprising strength. My name is Mei Chen. We were traveling to California. My brother has a shop there. Now you rest, Nathan said from the doorway, his voice gentle. You're safe here, Mrs. Chen. Your children are safe. That's what matters tonight. Over the following days, the small cabin became impossibly crowded, but filled with unexpected warmth. May's injuries healed slowly, and Emma found herself caring for 3 additional people, while Nathan worked double to keep them all fed. They buried James Chen on a hillside overlooking the valley, and May stood dry-eyed through the simple ceremony. Sarah pressed against her side. In my culture, May said quietly as they walked back to the cabin, we believe the spirits of the dead watch over the living. James will be angry with me for crying. He always said I was too emotional. A ghost of a smile touched her lips. He was probably right. Emma understood something about hiding grief behind practicality. What will you do now? Continue to California, I suppose. My brother is expecting us. Though how I'll make the journey alone with 2 children. May's voice trailed off, uncertainty replacing her usual composure. That night, Emma and Nathan lay awake in their makeshift bed on the floor. They'd given the bed to May and the children, whispering plans. We can't let her leave, Emma said. Not like this. It's nearly winter. The passes will close. She'll never make it. I know. Nathan was quiet for a moment. What are you thinking? I'm thinking this cabin is too small for 6 people. I'm thinking we need help with the farm. I'm thinking... Emma turned to face him in the darkness. I'm thinking maybe May and her children could stay. Through winter at least. Maybe longer. Nathan pulled her close, kissing her forehead. I was hoping you'd say that. We'll build an addition to the cabin. Another room. It'll be tight until then, but we'll manage. They presented the idea to May the next morning. She listened carefully, her intelligent eyes moving between them. "You would do this? Take in a widow and her children? We're strangers and Chinese. I know how some people feel about my kind." "You're not strangers anymore," Emma said firmly. "You're friends, and anyone who has a problem with that can take it up with Nathan's rifle." For the first time since the accident, May laughed. It was a broken sound, but genuine. "My brother always said Americans were unpredictable." I think he meant it as a criticism. "But now," she bowed formally, tears finally spilling. "Thank you. From the bottom of my heart, thank you." Winter closed around them like a fist, but inside the cabin, life bloomed. Nathan and May's older brother, who arrived just before the worst snows with supplies and gratitude, built the addition. May proved to be an exceptional cook, teaching Emma Chinese dishes that made their limited supplies stretch further. Sarah helped with chores, her laughter filling spaces that had been too quiet. Baby Thomas learned to crawl on their floor, his giggles a constant source of joy. And Emma discovered something she hadn't expected: friendship with another woman who understood loss, who knew what it meant to rebuild from ashes. One night, as they sat by the fire mending clothes while the men played with the children, May spoke quietly. "You know, in my village, they would say we were sisters in a past life, that the gods brought us together again." Emma smiled. "I don't know about past lives, but I know I'm grateful for this one." "As am I." May's needle paused. "Emma, may I ask you something personal?" "Of course. You and Nathan, you have no children yet. Do you want them?" Emma's hand stilled on the shirt she was mending. "We do. We've talked about it. But I'm still learning not to be afraid. Of being vulnerable like that. Of bringing a child into a world that can be so cruel." "The world is cruel," May agreed. "But it's also beautiful. My James used to say that every child is an act of defiance against despair. A promise that tomorrow will be better." Her voice roughened. "I miss him so much, Emma." "I know." Emma reached over, taking her friend's hand. "But he was right. Look at Sarah, at Thomas. They're your promise, your tomorrow." "And you'll have yours," May said with quiet certainty. "When you're ready, you and Nathan will make beautiful promises together." Later, in the privacy of their new room, small but theirs, Emma told Nathan about the conversation. He held her close, his hand resting on her stomach. "No rush," he murmured. "We've got time. And when it happens, Emma, you're going to be an amazing mother." "You think so?" "I know so. I've watched you with Sarah and Thomas. The way you love them, protect them, teach them. Our children will be lucky to have you." Emma felt something settle in her chest, a peace she hadn't known she was searching for. "I love you, Nathan Cross. I love you too, Emma Cross. Every day more than the last." That winter, as snow piled high and winds howled, their little family of 6 became something more than the sum of its parts. They were proof that survival wasn't just about enduring hardship. It was about finding joy in unexpected places, building connections that turned strangers into family, and choosing hope, even when the world offered every reason for despair. Spring brought both blessing and trouble. The blessing came first. Emma's courses were late, then absent entirely. When morning sickness began in earnest, May confirmed what Emma already suspected with tears of joy. "You're going to be a mother," May said, hugging her friend tightly. "Emma, I'm so happy for you." Nathan's reaction when Emma told him was everything she'd hoped for. He picked her up and spun her around, laughing with pure delight, then set her down carefully, as if she'd become made of glass. "We're having a baby," he kept repeating, wonder in his voice. "Emma, we're having a baby." "Sure, we are." She touched his face, seeing her own joy reflected in his eyes. "Are you ready for this?" "No, absolutely not," he grinned. "But we'll figure it out together, right?" "Together," she confirmed. Emma was working in the garden when they rode up, 3 men in official-looking clothes with measuring equipment. Nathan came from the barn, his expression wary. "Help you, gentlemen?" The lead surveyor, a thin man with spectacles and an officious manner, consulted his papers. "Nathan Cross, Owner of this property? That's right. I'm afraid there's been an error in the land office records. This property was improperly granted to the previous owner. The territory is reclaiming it for a railroad right-of-way. Emma felt the ground shift beneath her feet. What? No, we paid off the debt. This land is ours free and clear. I'm sorry, ma'am, but the original grant was invalid. You'll need to vacate within 90 days. You'll receive compensation, of course, but nothing. Nathan's voice was dangerously quiet. This land belonged to Emma's father, then her mother, now us. We've improved it, worked it, paid every cent owed on it. You can't just take it. Actually, sir, we can. Eminent domain. The railroad has priority for territorial development. The surveyor had the grace to look uncomfortable. I truly am sorry, but the law is clear. After they left, Emma sat on the porch steps, her hand unconsciously moving to her still flat stomach. Everything they'd built, everything they'd fought for, gone. 90 days to pack up their lives and start over. Nathan sat beside her, his jaw tight with fury. We'll fight this. How? We don't have money for lawyers. And even if we did, you heard him. Eminent domain. The territory can do whatever it wants. Emma felt tears building, but refused to let them fall. Maybe this is just how it is. Maybe we're not meant to have anything permanent. Don't say that. Nathan turned her to face him. Emma, look at me. We've survived worse than this. We'll survive this too. We have a baby coming, Nathan. Where are we going to go? How are we going to? We'll figure it out. His certainty was unshakable. I promise you, we'll figure it out. That night, they held a family meeting around the dinner table. May listened carefully as Nathan explained the situation, then surprised them all. Come to California with us, she said. My brother's shop is successful. He's been asking me to bring more family. There's land available, opportunities. We could all start fresh together. California's a long way, Nathan said slowly, but Emma could see him considering it. It is, May agreed. But what do you have here now? 3 months before you're homeless. In California, you'd have family, support, a real chance to build something lasting. Sarah piped up from the corner where she was playing with Thomas. Please say yes. I want us all to stay together forever. Emma and Nathan exchanged a long look, years of understanding passing between them. Finally, Emma nodded. California. We'll go to California. The next 90 days were a blur of preparation. They sold what they couldn't carry, packed what they could. Nathan built a sturdy wagon, and May's brother sent money for supplies. Emma tried not to think about leaving her mother's grave, her father's memory, everything familiar. On their last night in the cabin, Emma walked through the empty rooms, her hand trailing along walls that had sheltered them through so much. Nathan found her in their bedroom, tears finally falling. I'm sorry, she whispered. I know we have to go. I know this is the right choice. But this was ours, Nathan. We built this together. And we'll build again. He wrapped his arms around her from behind, his hands settling over where their child grew. Wherever we go, Emma, that's home. Because you're there, this baby's there. Our family, however it grows, that's what matters. You really believe that? With everything I am. He turned her to face him, wiping her tears with his thumbs. The day you saved me from those wolves, I was a man with nothing. No home, no hope, no future. You gave me all of that. Not this land, not this cabin. You. And I'm not losing that, no matter how many surveyors or railroads come along. Emma kissed him, pouring everything she couldn't say into that connection. When they pulled apart, she felt stronger. California, then. Our next adventure. Our next adventure, he agreed. The morning they left, Emma placed wildflowers on her mother's grave. I hope I'm making you proud, Mama, she whispered. I'm scared, but I'm also happy. I found someone who loves me the way you said I deserved. I'm going to have a baby. I'm going to be a mother like you were. And maybe that's what matters. Not the place, but the people. The wagon train gathered at dawn. 3 wagons total, carrying Nathan and Emma, May and her children, and May's brother Chen Wei with his wife. It would be a hard journey, months on the trail, but they'd face it together. As they rolled out, Emma looked back one last time at the mountains that had been her whole world. Then she turned forward, toward California, toward the future, toward whatever came next. Nathan reached over, taking her hand. "Ready?" Emma squeezed his fingers, feeling the solid warmth of him, the promise of their child between them, the family surrounding them. Ready. Behind them, wolves howled in the distance, but they no longer sounded like threats. They sounded like farewells, like the wild itself, wishing them well on their journey. And Emma thought, not for the first time, how strange life was. How one moment of courage, one decision to grab a rifle and run toward danger instead of hiding from it, could change everything. She'd saved a man from wolves and gained a husband, a friend, a family, a future. Together, they rode toward the setting sun, toward California and new beginnings, carrying everything that truly mattered with them. The trail to California was every bit as hard as they'd been warned. And worse, they joined a larger wagon train at Fort Laramie. Safety in numbers, the trail boss said, though Emma wondered if numbers truly meant safety when cholera could sweep through a camp in days. They lost 3 families in the first month, including a young couple Emma had befriended. She helped bury their baby daughter in an unmarked grave on the prairie and learned to hold her grief close, to keep moving because stopping meant death. Her pregnancy complicated everything. The constant jostling made her nauseous, and the summer heat was suffocating. Nathan tried to make her rest, but there was too much work, cooking, cleaning, caring for Sarah and Thomas when May drove the wagon. Emma pushed through exhaustion, driven by stubborn determination not to be a burden. It was May who finally confronted her one sweltering afternoon when Emma stumbled while fetching water. "You're going to kill yourself," May said bluntly, steering Emma into the shade. "And possibly your baby. Is that what you want?" "Of course not, but I can't just..." "Can't just what? Let people help you?" May's voice softened. "Emma, you saved my life. My children's lives. Let me help you now. You don't have to do everything alone." Emma felt something crack inside her chest. "I don't know how to be weak." "It's not weak to accept help. It's smart." May squeezed her hand. "You think I could have survived losing James without you and Nathan? Without having people to lean on? Strength isn't doing everything yourself. It's knowing when to let others carry you." That night, Emma finally told Nathan how scared she was, how every bump in the trail made her worry about the baby, how every story of women dying in childbirth during the journey made her heart race with terror. "What if something goes wrong?" she whispered in the privacy of their wagon. "What if I can't do this?" "Then I'll be there," Nathan said simply. "Every step, Emma. Every moment. You're not alone in this." He placed his hand over her stomach, feeling the first small flutter of movement. "And neither is our little one. They've got the strongest mother in the world." "I don't feel strong." "You fought off 4 wolves. You survived an abusive fiancé. You built a life from nothing. Emma, you're the definition of strong." He kissed her forehead. "But you don't have to be strong every second. Sometimes it's okay to rest, to let me carry you for a while." Emma let herself cry then, really cry, for the first time since leaving their cabin. Nathan held her through it, and when she finally fell asleep, exhausted and emptied out, she felt lighter. The next morning, she let May drive the wagon while she rested in back. She let Chen Wei's wife teach her to make Chinese dumplings, rather than insisting she could do everything herself. She let Nathan carry water and set up camp while she sat and talked to Sarah, teaching the girl to read using their precious books. And slowly, Emma learned that accepting help didn't make her weak. It made her part of something larger than herself. The real crisis came in September, crossing the Snake River. The ford looked manageable, but the current was stronger than it appeared. They were halfway across when Emma and May's wagon hit a submerged rock. The wagon lurched violently, and Emma felt something tear inside her. Pain lanced through her abdomen, sharp and terrifying. "Nathan, Her scream carried over the rushing water. He was in the river instantly, not even thinking, splashing through current that tried to sweep him away. He reached the wagon just as it tilted, throwing Emma into the water. The cold was shocking. Emma went under, the weight of her skirts dragging her down. She felt hands, Nathan's hands, grab her, haul her up. She gasped air, coughing, and felt warm blood running down her legs. "The baby," she sobbed as Nathan carried her to shore. "Nathan, the baby!" "Stay with me," he commanded, his voice sharp with fear. "Emma, stay with me." They made camp on the riverbank, the entire wagon train halting while Emma fought for her life and her child's. The cramping was worse than anything she'd experienced, waves of agony that left her screaming. May sent Sarah away with another family and worked with grim determination, boiling water, tearing sheets into bandages. "You need to push," May said, and Emma realized with horror that the baby was coming. Too early, at least 2 months too early. "I can't," Emma gasped. "It's too soon. May, please. You can and you will." May's voice was steel wrapped in silk. "Your baby needs you to be strong now, Emma. Just a little longer." Nathan knelt by Emma's head, letting her crush his hands, whispering prayers and promises and desperate encouragement. Hours blurred together, pain and fear and the taste of blood. And then, finally, a thin wail split the air. "A girl," May said, her voice thick with emotion. "Emma, you have a daughter." The baby was tiny, impossibly small, her cry weak but persistent. May wrapped her in blankets, trying to keep her warm, and placed her on Emma's chest. Emma looked down at the tiny red face and felt her heart crack open. "She's too small," Emma whispered, touching one impossibly delicate hand. "She won't. May, she won't survive, will she?" "I don't know." May's honesty was brutal but necessary. Babies this early, it's rare they make it, but she's fighting. Look, she's fighting. And she was. That tiny body, no bigger than Nathan's hand, was breathing, moving, living with fierce determination. "What do we name her?" Nathan asked, his voice breaking. Emma thought of the wildflowers she'd left on her mother's grave, of the mountain home they'd lost, of every hard thing they'd survived to get here. "Hope. We name her Hope." The next 3 days were the longest of Emma's life. She barely left Hope's side, holding the baby against her skin for warmth, trying desperately to nurse despite having almost no milk. Nathan fashioned a tiny cradle from a wooden crate, lining it with the softest fabric they had. May and Chen Wei's wife took turns helping, spooning sugar water into Hope's mouth when Emma's milk wouldn't come. On the 3rd night, Hope's breathing changed, becoming labored and rough. Emma felt panic clawing at her throat. "Don't leave me," she whispered to her daughter, tears streaming down her face. "Please, baby girl, please fight. We didn't come all this way to lose you now." Nathan wrapped his arms around them both, his face buried in Emma's hair. "Come on, Hope. You're a cross. We're fighters. Don't give up." Whether it was the words or pure stubborn will, Hope's breathing eased. By morning, she was nursing properly, her grip on Emma's finger surprisingly strong. "She's going to make it," May said, wonder in her voice. "Emma, I think she's actually going to make it." Emma looked up at Nathan, at May, at Chen Wei's wife, hovering anxiously in the doorway, at Sarah peeking in with wide, hopeful eyes, her family blood and chosen, bound together by hardship and love. "Of course she's going to make it," Emma said, her voice steady despite her exhaustion. "She's ours, and we don't quit." They stayed camped by the Snake River for a week, letting Emma and Hope recover. Other wagon trains passed them, but Chen Wei insisted they wait. "Family is more important than schedule," he said firmly, and no one argued. When they finally rejoined the trail, Hope was stronger, her cries louder, her grip more certain. Emma carried her in a sling against her chest, feeling that tiny heartbeat against her own, and thought about how close they'd come to losing everything. But they hadn't lost. They'd survived. Again. The mountains rose ahead of them, the Sierra Nevada that would be their last great challenge. Emma looked at them without fear. After all they'd been through, wolves and winter, cruel men and cruel fate, a baby born too soon on a riverbank far from home, mountains were just another obstacle to overcome. "Ready?" Nathan asked, reaching over to touch Hope's downy head. Emma smiled, tired but unbroken. Together? Always together. They headed toward California, toward the future, carrying hope in their arms and in their hearts. California was everything they dreamed and nothing they'd expected. Chen Wei's shop in Sacramento was indeed successful, and he welcomed them with open arms and practical support. He'd purchased land on the outskirts of town, enough for 3 families to build homes and start farms. It wasn't the mountain homestead Emma had loved, but it was theirs, and it was safe. Nathan threw himself into building their house with single-minded determination. It would be small at first, just 2 rooms, but solid, real, a permanent place to raise their daughter and whatever other children came. Emma watched him work, hope strapped to her chest, and marveled at how life could break you down and build you up in equal measure. Hope was thriving, growing stronger each day despite her rough start. At 3 months old, she was still small but healthy, with Emma's gray eyes and Nathan's dark hair. She smiled at her father when he came in from work and nestled against her mother at night, and Emma thought she might burst from the love of it. But not everything in California was easy. The town had its share of prejudice. Some shopkeepers wouldn't serve May or Chen Wei, and there were men who made it clear they didn't like seeing a white family living alongside Chinese immigrants. Nathan had already gotten into one fight defending Chen Wei's honor, coming home with split knuckles and a black eye. "It's not right," he'd said, furious and frustrated. "They saved our lives, their family. How can people are afraid of what's different," Emma interrupted gently, cleaning his wounds. "And fear makes them cruel. But we'll prove them wrong. Just by being here, by being friends, by showing that family is more than blood." She was right, though the proving took time. Emma started a garden, sharing vegetables with neighbors despite their initial coldness. May taught Chinese cooking to curious women who slowly overcame their suspicion. Nathan worked with Chen Wei, and people began to see that competence and character didn't depend on where you were born. Sarah enrolled in the local school, the first Chinese child to do so. She faced harassment and isolation at first, but Emma spent hours with her, teaching her English, preparing her. And when Sarah came home crying because the other children called her names, it was Hope, barely 6 months old, who made her smile again, reaching for her with chubby hands and gurgling with delight. "See," Emma said, "Hope knows you're wonderful, and eventually everyone else will too." One day, about a year after their arrival, Nathan came home with news. A man named William Sterling, who owned the largest ranch in the area, wanted to meet with them. "He heard about us." Nathan explained about how we crossed the country, about Hope being born on the trail. "He wants to hear our story." Emma was suspicious. Wealthy men didn't usually seek out poor farmers without reason, but she agreed to the meeting. William Sterling was not what she expected. He was in his 60s, with kind eyes and a genuine smile. He listened as they told their story, asking questions, particularly interested in Hope. "My daughter was born premature," he said quietly when they finished. 40 years ago, she didn't survive." He cleared his throat. "I've never forgotten the helplessness I felt, the way my wife looked when we lost her. But your baby lived. Your Hope survived." "She did," Emma said, holding Hope a little tighter. "Though there were moments we thought, that's a good point. But she fought, and you fought for her." Sterling pulled out papers. "I've got more land than I can manage. I need good people to help run it. People who understand hardship, who don't quit when things get hard." He slid the papers across. "Work for me, manage my northern property. The house there is empty. It's yours to live in. Salary, percentage of profits, and after 10 years, the land becomes yours outright. Nathan and Emma stared at each other, hardly daring to believe it. "Why us?" Nathan asked. "You don't know us." "I know enough. Chen Wei speaks highly of you, and I've seen how you treat your family, the one you were born with and the one you chose. That tells me everything I need to know about your character." Sterling stood, extending his hand. "So what do you say? Want to build a future here in California?" They said yes. The northern property was beautiful. Rolling hills, good water, and a house that was small but sturdy. They moved in on a bright October morning, exactly 2 years after Emma had first shot at those wolves to save Nathan's life. Emma stood on the porch of their new home, Hope on her hip, and watched Nathan and Chen Wei unload furniture. May was inside with Sarah and Thomas, already making the house feel like home. And Emma felt something she hadn't felt since leaving her mountain cabin. Peace. "You're smiling," Nathan said, climbing the steps to join her. "What are you thinking about?" "That day in the snow, when you stumbled into my cabin half dead from wolf bites. If someone had told me then that we'd end up here, married, with a daughter, with this beautiful home and this wonderful family, I would have thought they were crazy." Nathan wrapped his arms around them both, and Hope squealed with delight. "Best decision I ever made, getting attacked by those wolves." Emma laughed. "That's a terrible way to meet your wife." "Maybe, but it worked, didn't it?" He kissed her temple. "Everything we've been through, Matthew, losing the cabin, the trail, almost losing hope, it was all worth it to get here, to this moment." "To this moment," Emma agreed, then added mischievously, "even though you snore." "I do not." He stopped, seeing her grin. "You're never going to let that go, are you?" "Never." Hope reached for Nathan, and he took her, spinning her in a circle until she giggled. Emma watched them, her heart so full it ached. They'd built this, not with money or luck, but with courage and love and stubborn refusal to give up. They'd faced wolves in winter, cruel men and crueler fate, and they'd survived. More than survived. They'd thrived. That night, after everyone had gone to their own homes and Hope was asleep in her cradle, Nathan and Emma stood on their porch watching the stars. "I love you," Emma said softly. "I don't say it enough, but I do, more than I ever thought possible. I love you too." Nathan pulled her close. "And I'm grateful. Every single day I'm grateful that you grabbed that rifle and came running. That you saved a stranger's life and ended up saving mine in every way that matters." "We saved each other," Emma corrected. "That's what partners do. What family does." "What family does," Nathan echoed. They stood there together as the California night deepened around them, their daughter sleeping safe inside, their future stretching bright and full of promise ahead. The widow's daughter and the farmer she'd rescued from wolves, building a life one day at a time, one choice at a time, one moment of courage at a time. Together, always together. Thank you so much for listening to this story. I'd love to know where you're enjoying this tale from. Are you listening at home, during your commute, or perhaps while working? Please subscribe to the From Wild West channel and share your thoughts in the comments below. What did you think of Emma and Nathan's journey? Your feedback means the world to us.